We have a few more questions today, so I'll endeavour to answer. Thank you very much for helping to teach us. Can you please share some approaches to deal with self-conceit and how to help develop sincere humility? Self-conceit. Well, there's many levels of this, many kinds. It's both a very coarse mental defilement, which causes us great suffering. It's also a very refined mental defilement. They say only the Arahant, fully enlightened being, has fully let go of conceit. The word mana is conceit, and the Anagami even still has a very subtle sense of conceit, sense of I. At the very least, they have the sense of, I am not yet enlightened, I've not yet finished the practice. But on the course level, it's what we encounter straight away as we start practicing Dhamma. The effects of self-view and conceit, we say ditthi and mana, will come up all the time, causing us suffering. Conceit isn't always about being proud or arrogant. That's one form of conceit. Sometimes it's also when we feel very inferior. So I'm worse than somebody else. It leads to a lot of comparing in the mind. I'm better than, worse than, I'm not good enough, or I am good enough. Or sometimes just I'm the same. I'm entitled to the same as them. I am the same as them. So it's a very subtle kind of defilement which hides in our thinking, our views, our reasoning. We just chanted Bharahave Panchakanda. The 5 khandhas are heavy burden. Where does self-view form and conceit form? It's around these 5 khandhas. My body, my feelings, memories, thoughts, sense consciousness. It's the sense of mine, me, mine. The Buddha has already told us it's heavy. Why is it heavy? Because you keep having to carry this burden of self. We're always comparing, leading on to competing with others. When you have a sense of self, you have to defend it. So that's where a lot of our conflicts, disagreements come in life. We have an opinion, my opinion, and it's different from someone else's. My view, their view, my space, your space, my things, your things, it forms over everything. And it's heavy. As long as you keep carrying the burden of self, you feel weighed down. You might not realize it, or you might realize it but can't yet let go of it. So you feel heavy. Whereas the Arahant feels light, perfectly light, because the sense of self has been seen as a delusion. It's not based on anything real. It's a trick of the mind, based on ignorance, not understanding. And our Dhamma practice is helping us to see through this superficial attachment, going to the very heart, the very root of our existence and to the truth of things. On one level you deal with conceit, say when you come into a monastery in a retreat, we all follow the same 8 precepts. We all follow the same routine. We eat at the same time. This can be helpful. It's called Sila Samanyata. We have a common level of Sila, an agreed level of practice and training. Makes things very smooth. If everybody was doing their own thing, one person keeps 8 precepts, next person keeps 5, next person keeps 4, 3, 2, 1. It become very confusing, all standards of behavior. We don't know where to turn, who to trust. If everyone's eating food at different times, coming and going at different times, it gets very difficult to run a retreat, it doesn't create a peaceful atmosphere. So in monasteries, retreats, Sila Samanyata is where we all follow the same rules of training and precepts. Helps to level out some of our strong self-view and conceit. So we try to all give up to the training, to the rules, to the practice. What is it that makes you want to not do that? Well, your self-view. Maybe you think, I know a lot about Buddhism, I don't have to do what they're doing, I'll do it my own way. Maybe we feel we're an experienced meditator, we can just do our own thing, and so on. And we might have our reasons, our excuses, but in another sense it might lead to difficulties with other people. We might look down on others, or sometimes the other way around. We might be walking around thinking, I'm no good, I can't meditate, I can't do it, I've got no merit, no barami. That can also be a cause of suffering. It's a heavy feeling you always have, and you always react in the same way as long as you hold on to that self-view. The Buddha actually said once, if you keep the 5 precepts or the 8 precepts, but then you, through your self-view, your conceit, you start to look down on others who maybe don't keep the precepts as well as you, or you feel don't do it as well as you. He said, you're a fool. It kind of takes away all the goodness of your precepts if it becomes a cause for self-view, conceit to arise. Same with meditation, attainments. You may have a very peaceful meditation or some deep, profound insight that really helps you change your view of things, improve. But then if you go around thinking, I have attained samadhi, or I have attained insight, well, it's still going to be a cause of suffering, and it can be a deep attachment. And sometimes we do that. We hold on to even the good things that we do. We can do dana, help people, do acts of kindness, service, and then we think we're good because of it. Self-view forms conceit. Maybe you look at other people and say, they don't do as much dana as me. Cause of suffering. Maybe we are constantly comparing ourselves with others. Maybe we see others don't do what we do, so we get angry, irritated. Maybe we'll look down on them. On and on it goes. We can form around our practice, and then in the wider sense, you have conceit forming around who you feel you are, think you are, male, female, young, old, your profession, your job, where you live, who you're married to, or you're single, or you're married, or you have a partner. All kinds of things can become a basis for self-view and conceit, and causes us lots of suffering. When you meditate and you're bringing your mindfulness to the breath, for example, well, all of that will be disappearing. The more mindful of the breath you are, the sense of self disappears. You're not male, female, young, old, married, single. You're not a good meditator or a bad meditator. You're not better than or worse than. You're just with the breath, aren't you? All the concepts and the labels fade away when you're with the breath. That's why it's peaceful. You get a rest from this voice of the self, always complaining, comparing, getting happy, getting sad. It'd be strange if you're following the breath and you start thinking, my breath is better than their breath, or my breath is worse than their breath. It doesn't make sense, does it? It's just breath, it's just air. You're focusing the mind on that, so you're breaking through a lot of the concepts that feed conceit, self-view. The more we do it, the more we get used to letting go of self-view. The mind goes quiet. And that helps us to deal with the different situations which trigger our self-view. If you do your meditation, you contemplate letting go of self, then go off, you meet people, you do things, well, the sense of self re-emerges, but now you've got some peace and some clarity, and you can question it. You say, oh, look at me, I'm suffering here because I'm too attached to my opinion or my sense of conceit on this one issue or this thing. You see the suffering more clearly, and obviously that's the point of letting go of conceit and self-view, is you're freeing your mind from suffering. The Buddha said, when you have dukkha in the mind and you don't have mindfulness or wisdom, you take it personally. I am suffering. This is my suffering, my pain, my problem, my this, my that. It's the sense of self, and it's the most extreme with any form of suffering. It's where self comes. You sit there with a pain in your leg, my pain. And the stronger the view is, maybe you reinforce it. I'm always having pain in my legs. Oh, I'm always having this problem. And you build up a whole picture in your mind. Maybe even it stops you meditating, because you just think, I'm the one with the painful legs. It's just self-view, and it's an illusion, isn't it? If you bring up mindfulness when you have a pain in the leg, maybe all the self disappears. Sometimes the pain disappears, sometimes it's still there, but you're not attaching to it when you have mindfulness. Worst one is when we talk, we go out from the meditation hall, go to the kitchen, we start talking about things, our self-view comes out in our opinions. I like this, I don't like that, I know this, I don't know that. And they say that what are the causes of conflict between people? Well, it's views and opinions and self-view and conceit. I'm right, you're wrong. So people often kind of damage their meditation retreat by letting off steam in the kitchen, talking a lot. And they even get disharmony, dissatisfied with themselves, with others, arguments, conflicts, and so on. Self-view. So Ajahn Chah used to say, if you want to get rid of your self-view, speak little. Be very careful what you say. Only speak what's necessary, what's helpful. Speak little. Speak little, sleep little. These are kind of teachings that Ajahn Chah would give a lot. Very simple guidelines. We sleep too much, we eat too much. There's another one, eat little. The more we eat, the more we sleep. Talk little. Very simple ways to bring up mindfulness, and it will help push through some of the self-view, some of the attachment which is fed by our kilesas. So keeping the precepts, bringing up mindfulness, and then reflecting back on self-view and the suffering of it helps you to let go. There's a famous occasion, one monk was with Ajahn Chah, and he was contemplating this thing, always having opinions and the self coming up. He was a new monk, and Ajahn Chah knew what he was thinking. Ajahn Chah was clearing a pathway, so he picked up a tree branch that fell on the path, And Ajahn Chah said, it was heavy, so he said to the other monk, "Oh, pick up that end, I'll pick up this end." And they picked it up. Just before they threw it into the forest, Ajahn Chah said, "Oh, feel it, is it heavy?" I said, "Oh yeah, it's heavy." He said, "Throw it away," threw it away. "Now how does it feel?" "Oh, it feels very light." You get that relief when you throw away something heavy. So that's how it feels when you let go of yourself, your conceit. You feel better. When we're attached, we don't see this, so we feel we've got to cling on, defend it, and then we keep suffering over the most simple little things. Sometimes I say this story at the retreat. One year, somebody came and they reserved their meditation seat, their cushion in this hall. That's my spot. Every time the seats are put out, that's my spot. Self-view, isn't it? My spot. It's just a cushion and a seat. It doesn't belong to anybody. It belongs to everyone, the whole Sangha and community. But my spot. No one else is going to have my spot. So every time someone else tries to sit in the spot, "No, you can't sit there." Get very agitated, upset, always telling other people to move. That's my spot. So even a humble meditation cushion can become the cause for conflict when there's self-view, conceit. Everything else can be the same. Well, the Buddha said periodically that can be useful, but not all the time, because sometimes we need to communicate, to help each other, to understand each other. But if you are careful and you limit it, then you're less chance of saying unskillful things, harming other people through our speech. And especially when we're meditating like this, everything is arranged. You don't have to think much about food or accommodation or the routine. It's all set up, so you don't need to talk very much, do you? Obviously, if you're in an emergency situation, you have some illness or injury, you might seek help. Okay, you need to talk. But if you just see your friend and say, "Oh, I haven't seen you for ages, please tell me what you did for the last year," that's going to fill your mind up, and then you come back to meditate, all you've got is all the thoughts about your friend. So you have to balance it. So generally, speak little, generally. It's a general instruction. Heartache or feeling defeated by life and the world, good reasons for people to ordain as a monk or a nun. Do people commonly ordain for these reasons? Feeling defeated by life? Well, often seeing the suffering of the world and our attachments and our ignorance is a cause for people to come into monastic life. Heartache. I'm not so sure that's really a strong motivation. If you think about it, if you've got a broken heart, from a relationship, maybe temporarily you're seeking something else, but to be a monk or a nun requires a lot more commitment than just feeling sad because you've lost out in love or something. You have to really commit to the Buddha Dhamma Sangha, to the training, the Dhamma Vinaya. So it depends how you define it. If you're feeling very depressed, you become a monk. Well, you have to work hard to get through that depression. Generally, people who ordain, they're not completely defeated by the world. They're actually looking to go beyond the world. So they, rather than feeling defeated by it, they're interested to understand it, gain truth, understanding into truth, insight. So the world is just the world. If your mind understands the Four Noble Truths and the Dhamma, you don't have to worry about the world. You just let the world carry on doing its thing. You can't stop other people what they do. Some do good things, some do bad things. You can't stop the world spinning and going on. That's not your job. So all you're doing is coming to understand the nature of the world, and you're seeing it's impermanent, it's unsatisfactory, it's not self. So your mind sees that in all of your experience, so it separates from the world because it doesn't want to cling on to what's impermanent and what doesn't belong to you. You're willing to let it go. So you live in the world, but the world doesn't cause you suffering. And that's what draws many people. They're interested to learn that. That's why we call it insight meditation. You're developing insight into the nature of life. This body, this mind, the world. So obviously sometimes we have disappointments and problems which make us see suffering, but your idea is to see beyond the suffering, see through the cause and then let go of the cause. You don't just stay defeated and that would be a very negative mind state, which is with a lot of suffering. Ajahn, when doing walking meditation, could I concentrate on the breathing in and out, or on the word Buddho or Buddha? Most people find in the beginning, when our mindfulness is not strong, when we're walking, it's quite hard to be with the breath, because the breath is very subtle. And as you're moving your body, it's quite hard to keep up with that feeling. So, the way in Thailand we're taught is to use the word Buddho. As you walk, use Buddho with the feeling of the feet. But it's not wrong if you experiment and you find you can follow the breath. Or later on in your practice, when you become more peaceful, more mindful, maybe it's quite natural you can follow the breath. You might no longer use Buddho, and you just send your attention at the normal place you do when you're sitting, so maybe tip of the nostrils or the chest, and as you're walking you keep your attention there. That's quite possible, but you'll find in the beginning that's difficult, so just stay with the feet. It's an easier object to focus on. Again, how do you explain meditation and Buddhism to narrow-minded loved ones? Well, I must commend you on your metta for loving narrow-minded people. That is correct. We have to start with metta, goodwill, for all the people we're involved with. And with goodwill we also use wisdom. Panya, understanding. So if our family member has never had any experience of Buddhism or meditation, it's natural they won't understand, maybe a bit suspicious or unfamiliar. So it takes time. And the best way to introduce them to Buddhism is be a good example. One time family came here, and the mum and the dad and the kids, and the mum and the dad have learnt meditation, and they want me to teach the kids. Say, we want them to learn meditation. And so I asked the kids, so what do you think about that? And they said, well, my mum, she meditates all the time, but she still gets angry with me, so I don't see the point. If you're practicing Buddhism, you have to show what the Buddha taught through your practice. We're not perfect, so we make mistakes, obviously, but you have to try and put it into practice, and that's the best advertisement for Buddhism. If you're learning meditation and you're finding it makes you more peaceful, you understand things better, more self-controlled, that will show in your behavior, and you won't lose your temper so much. You're more calm, more patient in different situations. You're more forgiving. So if they're they display different views and opinions from you, or you can accept that, forgive them. And then you also have to accept maybe it takes time to change their views, so don't rush in to try and convert your spouse or your brother or sister or whoever it is. You might not be able to do that immediately because everybody's karma and their character is different. If you do your practice first and you show that you're getting happiness and good things are coming from your practice, well, some of your relatives may become interested and they see it's good for you and they ask you questions and they want to know more. Some of them may be not interested and you have to accept that. Even the Buddha, although he inspired many of his family members, not all of them were inspired to practice following him, or some of them took a long time, some of them were still stuck in their own perception, self-views. It's just our son or our relative, and that's the Buddha. So we're also going to have those same issues, and the best thing is just get on with your practice because you know it's good, and share merits with your family, spread metta to them, wish them well, and hopefully they gradually come to understand. But if they don't, just be patient with them and accept that. It's very common. One family member practices and one doesn't. And the one who doesn't always complains, why you go to the temple? Why do you meditate? Why do you spend our money on these things? It's very common. You just have to be sensitive and try to explain to them, show them why you do. But if they don't yet understand, well, just get on with your practice and they'll maybe come round to it in their own time. Karma. Maybe they don't have a strong belief or foundation in Buddhism. Maybe in last life they didn't practice Buddhism, so it's not strong for them. Maybe only later in life when they have some strong suffering, they look for some solution, something to help them. Maybe they turn to Buddhism. Or maybe they're just so busy with their life when they're strong and healthy, working, looking after the family, making money. They just feel they have no time for Buddhism. They say, don't bother me with that Buddhism thing, I've got to put food on the table. And you could understand their point of view. Maybe they feel very pressured to earn money and help the family. So people help Buddhism in different ways, they practice in different ways. Some people, they feel they're not ready to meditate or go to the temple because they're working or they have other duties. But they're not stopping their other family members doing it. Maybe they even support them. You can support and practice Buddhism just by supporting others, by giving them the time, the opportunity, and you use your money. Maybe you send your money with them, or you go on tambun, make some merit, but you yourself, you're still working, no time. But in your mind, you're happy for them to practice. There are some people like that. They support the religion that way. We all do what we can. Obviously, if things are going well, they're happy, they're content, they might not feel any need for anything else in their life. They have everything they need. The danger is that situation may not last. It may change. And what do they do then? It's very common. People, while they're healthy, got money, got work and family, everything going well. Oh, I don't need religion, don't need anything. But then suddenly they get sick, or they lose their job, or something changes. And sometimes those people really suffer because they don't know what to do, become very depressed, get drunk, do different things. But some people at that point may turn to Buddhism and say, oh, maybe now Buddhism can really help me. Depends on their karma. Like in Thailand, as you know, sometimes there's a very great enlightened teacher. We say Arahant. People live right next door to where the Arahant lives, and they never go and see him. Always doing their job, doing their thing, sometimes even doing bad things. Right next door to an Arahant, and they completely ignore them. It's karma, isn't it? They don't have the karma, they don't see the value, they're not yet ready, they don't want to go to the temple. Maybe even get angry when the Arahant says, oh, practice meditation. They just shake their head and say, oh, it's just rubbish. It happens. They're so blind, they don't yet see. So you just have to be patient, practice upekkha. You wait for them, say, oh, hope one day maybe they will see. They're not yet ready, okay, maybe later they'll see. There's one monk, Lumpur Ben, he has a monastery, very famous monastery in Sakonnakhon, Doi Dhammachedi. And they had to build a wall around the mountain because some of the villagers are always coming in, shooting wild pigs, cutting the trees, behaving badly, stealing things. And somebody from Bangkok came to see him. They said, Lumpur, why do you have to build this wall and stop these people coming? Don't they see you're an Arahant? They're the luckiest people in the world. Can't you help them? Can't you do something? And he just shook his head and said, I don't know what to do either. They just don't see. Some people, they're not ready, they don't see. We have to accept that. But we still have metta, karuna for them, and we're patient with them, but we just have to let them go and wait for another time. ใกล้เกลือกินด่าง Namaskar Lumpur. Is it necessary to close my eyes as much as I can while I meditate? Very often I find that keeping eyes open makes it easier to focus on my breath. It's not wrong to sit meditation with your eyes open. Ajahn Buddhadasa used to encourage this. When you begin breath meditation, you don't close your eyes, you keep them half open, like some of the Buddha statues. But you just look down, maybe at the tip of your nose or the ground. So you keep your eyes in one position, you're not letting them move around. And you shut your eyelids a little bit, but not completely, so you still have light. And then you still follow the feeling of the breath in and breath out. But it's very difficult to fall asleep when your eyes are open. You can still fall asleep, but it's more difficult. So you do that. Sometimes people do it just for when they're sleepy, and they keep the eyes open. Sometimes people actually do it as their normal posture and their normal habit. Keep the eyes open but focus down. You can do it. Japanese Zen monks, they do it. They often sit with their eyes open, just looking at a bare wall in front of them. Blank wall. What you have to be careful if you have eyes open is if you have movement, then you want to look. Your eyes go and look, and then you become distracted, start thinking. So you have to be careful. When you close your eyes, you also have to be aware where are the eyeballs, the eye sockets. Because even with your eyes closed, you can move your eyes around. Some people close their eyes and they put too much pressure and they feel uncomfortable. Really squeeze their eyes shut and they can't hold on to that very long. So just if you close your eyes, close them slowly, gently, And just keep your eyes in the same position, looking down, and that will help you to concentrate. Sorry if I could not focus on the question very well. This morning Ajahn talked about applying mindfulness, being mindful, meditating while we were doing different activities as work in daily life. Ajahn talked about not to be distracted by hindrances. Please tell more about practicing towards that ability, particularly when work involves a lot of communication with others. Well, with communicating with others, our guideline is Samma Vajja, as we chanted the other night, right speech, so speech that is true, not false, not lying, not changing the truth, exaggerating, not malicious, divisive, not setting people against each other, telling tales, backstabbing. You're not abusive, so not rude, insulting, and not foolish, pointless chatter that's just wasting time and doesn't lead to mindfulness but leads to more mental proliferation, thinking about a lot of different things with no real purpose. These are the 4 kinds of right speech. So you practice mindfulness with that. If you're doing a job where you're speaking, you're always checking yourself, reviewing your speech, and sometimes you say something wrongly, so afterwards you review and you think, oh, how could I have said that better? And you learn that way. Sometimes you see the suffering, you say something wrong and you feel suffering, or someone else is suffering because of what you said, so you stop or you change. And you notice how the hindrances can affect your speech. So if you're very angry, well, it comes out in your speech. If you're not mindful, your words, even if you speak the truth, but you have a mood, the tone of your speech can be very nasty or very aggressive. If we're very greedy or lustful, it comes out in our speech. When you want something, you really speak very nicely. You might flatter someone. Oh, you look nice today. Can you lend me $10? Your hindrance will affect your speech. Greed, anger. If you're drowsy or lazy, I guess maybe you just turn off. Someone says, "Can you do this?" and you just pretend you're asleep. There's many different situations. When you're afraid, it affects your speech. You're afraid of someone, maybe you get very defensive, or you show your fear. Maybe you're afraid about something. You say, "Don't do that, don't worry, don't do that," or "Don't go there." All kinds of situations. You have to be aware how your mood, the object in your mind, is affecting your speech. Practice mindfulness and try and filter between the verbalization in your mind and then your speech. This is why Ajahn Chah said, speak little. He didn't say don't speak at all, but if you speak little, then you're more careful to choose your words. And the Buddha said you have to choose the right time, the right place to say something. If you have something important to say to somebody else, don't say it when they're very busy or stressed, because they won't be able to respond very well. If it's a very important thing, maybe they think you don't give it value, or they say, "Why are you telling me this now? I'm so busy, I can't think properly." You have to think about the time, the place, choose the words. The Buddha said, choose the right words, appropriate for that situation, kind words. Speak the truth, don't tell lies. If the truth is hard to say, well, maybe you wait to another time, or just postpone it, or just keep quiet. It's not lying, but you're just keeping quiet because you know it might stir up trouble. There's many things, many aspects to right speech. All of it requires some mindfulness and then wise reflection. You think how to do this well, and it's practice. White lie. It depends on you and the situation, and you can tell a black lie if you want. I won't stop you, but it will bring you some regret. And maybe white lies even can bring you some regret later, because it can become a habit. It becomes like a habit, always exaggerate, say something not quite true. And what the Buddha said is the way kilesa, the way it works is it tends to evolve and get stronger, more intense. So white lies maybe become grey lies, blurry. Then they become black lies. Yeah, it slips. It's like that. So you have to be more careful, more mindful. And if you're not sure, Ajahn Chah used to say, if in doubt, don't say it. If you're not sure, don't say it. Maybe it's safer. You think about it, how to say it. Okay, when you're ready, then you say it. So sometimes, even the Buddha, sometimes he just stays silent. They ask him a question and he thinks, if I tell them it won't help, maybe it confuses them, or they won't like the answer and they'll get angry or something. So sometimes you just stay quiet. It's not the right time. Other times you tell somebody something very painful. Tell them that they're wrong or that they're doing something incorrect, and they didn't like it, but he was doing it to help them to see the truth. It all depends on the situation. Bhante, could you please explain how do merits help end suffering? Well, as we chanted, the Buddha talked about 10 meritorious courses of action. Keeping precepts, practicing generosity, meditation, helping other people with jobs, recognizing the good other people do. It's making merit. Giving our anumodana, making merit. Sharing merit, actually dedicating it to the dead. Making our mind in line with the Dhamma. So listening to Dhamma and then training our mind to think, to see the truth and explain the truth and speak with the truth. There's many ways we make merit, and all of this is good for us, and it helps others as well. You're constantly training your mind. But there's a word that they use with merit. Merit in Pali is punya, and there's a word that goes together with punya is kusala, the kusala dhamma, which means skillful dhammas. Ajahn Chah used to say, well, merit, punya, has one drawback, is that sometimes we get drunk with merit, intoxicated. We say, oh, I'm going to make merit, I'm doing this, I'm making merit. Sometimes the kusala dhammas are not keeping up with the merit, so we do some dana and we're very proud and happy, and then our ego comes up and we become very arrogant and look against others or compare with others and say, oh, they're not very good, look, I'm better than them. Get more self-important or something. The kusala dhamma is lacking. It's not keeping up with the merit. So the merit becomes something that actually can turn into suffering. Even merit can become suffering. Sometimes we get drunk on making merit. We say, well, we've got to help, do this, do that. But we're not thinking straight. So we maybe make mistakes or do something in an imbalanced way. Maybe actually do the wrong thing sometimes. So you use kusala dhammas. Kusala means being clever, skillful with your mind. As you do good, merit means good, and it creates happiness, which is correct, but you have to do it in a skillful way so it doesn't also create suffering. So sometimes you help people, but maybe you help them in the wrong way. So you have a good thought, merit, but then you do it the wrong way, so it actually leads to a bad result. So the first time I learned that was when I was a Cub Scout, when I was a little boy. In England they used to have something called Bobber Job Week, and you go around earning money for charity by doing jobs for people. It's usually strangers. You knock on the door, say, any jobs? I'll do, you can pay me. You're always looking for a chance to help people and do things to make some money for charity. So it's merit. But then sometimes you're a kid, so you don't think about what you're doing. So one kid, we always had this thing, you should help old people, carry the bags for them, help them on the bus, help them cross the road. We should respect old people, help them because we're young. So this old lady is standing by the side of the road, and the Cub Scout, he went up and said, you're going to cross the road, and he grabbed her arm and took her across the road, and then she said, but I didn't want to cross the road. Sometimes it's like that. You try and help somebody, but you end up making a mess of it, or it goes wrong. So merit can be a bit like that. Or for monks, sometimes monks like to make merit to give Dhamma talks. So in my monastery I was in once, a lot of the monks were giving Dhamma talks, and there was one monk who thought, I'm going to give the longest talk and I'll make more merit. So he's talking and talking, and when it started the hall was full like this, and his talk was, it's okay, he's telling some good things, but after a while it's getting more boring and the quality maybe not the best, so the hall started to thin out, the monks disappeared, the lay people disappeared. In the end there's just him and about 3 people left. He's just talking and talking, and someone else had to come in and said, enough. So he made some merit, but maybe it went too far. So sometimes it's like that. In Thai ถือศีล8นี้เราร้องเพลงไม่ได้ใช่ไหมครับใช่แล้วศีลถ้าศีลต้องทำอย่างไรครับถ้าศีลขาดต้องทำยังไงร้องเพลงเกี่ยวกับพระพุทธเจ้าหรือวันสำคัญทางพระพุทธศาสนาได้ไหมครับก็ถ้าเราถือศีล8 I'll answer in Thai first, sorry. ถ้าถือศีล8ก็คงไม่ต้องร้องเพลงเพราะว่าเอาไว้ช่วงที่เราถือศีล5ก็ไม่ผิดถือศีล8ก็เป็นโอกาสที่เราจะสำรวมเข้ามีสติมีความเสียสละก็ร้องเพลงถึงจะอาจจะเป็นเพลงเกี่ยวกับศาสนามีความหมายดีรู้สึกชอบแต่ว่าเสียงเพลงอาจจะทำให้เราเพลิดเพลินขาดสติติดอยู่กับเสียงก็เลยท่านก็ไม่ส่งเสริมถ้าศีลขาดก็ตั้งใจใหม่วันนี้เผลอไปเปิดเพลงฟังเพลินหน่อยโอเคพรุ่งนี้ไม่ฟังแล้วตั้งใจใหม่ก็แค่นั้นแค่ตั้งใจใหม่แล้วก็วันที่เราออกจากศีล8เราก็เปิดเพลงฟังก็ได้แต่ให้เรารู้ในใจว่าโอกาสที่จะเผลอตามเสียงตามอะไรก็มีบางทีก็มัชฌิมาปฏิปทาคือเราไม่เปิดเพลงฟังแต่เราก็ทบทวนความหมายของบทสรรเสริญพระพุทธเจ้าหรือบทสำคัญเราก็พิจารณาความหมายโดยภาษาก็ได้แต่ไม่ต้องไปลงเพลง It's just a question about if you keep the 8 precepts and you listen to songs or sing songs that are Buddhist songs, which we have, sometimes songs about the Buddha or the Dhamma, some teachings. Is that wrong or is that incorrect? Well, strictly speaking, yes. You don't sing, you don't listen to music when you keep the 8 precepts. You can keep that for when you're keeping the 5 precepts. when you keep the 8 precepts, you're practicing mindfulness, you're increasing your effort with mindfulness and renunciation and the sense of composure and restraint. So you cut out music, entertainments. So you might decide to just think about the words of the song. If it's an inspiring song, well, you can think of the words like poetry and like Dhamma teachings. There's nothing wrong with that, but you don't have to actually sing them. And when we chant, we're not supposed to chant like a song. It's just a recitation of the teachings. So we're not looking to make it a very kind of like a beautiful song. And if you forget yourself, this question says if you forget yourself, you break your precept, what do? Well, once you realize you've broken the precept, then you re-establish them. You determine, oh, from now on I'll keep the precept. It's very simple. Venerable Ajahn, could you define the 3rd precept and how it applies to a single people? Also in daily life, sometimes hard to give answers which are not lies. Would a evasive but tactful answer still break the 4th precept? Well, we know, the 3rd precept, we say, sexual misconduct. We undertake to abstain from sexual misconduct. When we keep the 8 precepts, it's from abstain from any sexual activity at all, on your own, with others, whatever. The 3rd precept in the 5 precepts means harmful sexual relations. So any kind of, we say, illicit, forced sex, so it includes all kinds of harmful sex like rape or forced sex. So it even could be between 2 people who normally live together, but one forces oneself on the other. If you're single, well, you can use different phrases, don't play around too much. Ajahn Chah said, it's hard enough to know one person. If you've got 2 or 3 or 4, life gets very complicated. It generally generates a lot of suffering, a lot of states of indulgence, lose our mindfulness, lose our wisdom, the more indulgence we have. So ideally you keep, if you're looking for a relationship, you have a partner, well, just keep to one partner. If you're single, just stay single and no suffering then, isn't it? Relationships, a lot of suffering. If you're wise enough and you're restrained enough, just stay single and you save all kinds of problems. But if you do date people, well, to be honest, if you're dating one person, don't keep dating others at the same time. That's what people do nowadays, on the dating websites. They've got about 20 different people on the go. People have a lot of lust, a lot of interest in this. It's constantly chatting with these people. After a while it gets very complicated and they start chatting to someone, they forget that it's actually someone else. They've forgotten because they've got so many people on the go. You just think about it. If you meditate, the more relationships you have, the more complicated, the more suffering you're going to have. So 5 khandhas is already enough to work with. That's our 5 khandhas. You have another person that's 10 khandhas. 3 people, 15 khandhas. So moderation, modesty. As far as speech goes, well, I talked about that just now. Yes, sometimes you can evade the truth. It's not lying, you just avoid talking about the issue, or if you feel it's going to be too harmful or cause too much suffering, sometimes you postpone things, you avoid talking about them, and it's not necessarily lying. Sometimes, like you say, you look for a very tactful way where you give some information, but maybe not all the information if it's not going to help the situation. It's not lying, you're just choosing when to say something. And we probably should do that. We shouldn't always just tell everything we know. We have to think, what will the results of what I say be? Last question. When you are first starting meditation and making it a part of your daily routine, how long should you practice for? Minimum 2 hours in the morning, minimum 2 hours in the evening. You just, as long as you can, but be practical. The best thing is to meditate every day. Best thing of all, every day. So pick a time of day that you can maybe do every day. So first thing in the morning is a very common one. Before you do anything else, you meditate. Pick a period of time that you can manage. So 15 minutes, half an hour, 1 hour, depending on your faith, your situation, how well your meditation is going, you might extend that time. But try and plan it so you've got the time available, the place, the time, and you do it. You know, we all go back from this retreat, ends on New Year's Day, everyone makes the resolution, I'm going to meditate every day. And you ask people after a few weeks, they come back and say, well, I did it for a few days and then gone. Try and get into regular practice. So if regular practice means you can only manage 15 minutes, well, that's better than nothing, but try and keep it up. And it's natural. If you're becoming more peaceful, you're getting more from your practice, you'll want to do it longer. And ideally, if you're in a situation where you can be a bit flexible, maybe one day you're sitting meditation and all things come together, you're peaceful, the mindfulness is there, you're inspired, just keep going, don't stop, don't get up. You know, if it's possible, that's the best, isn't it? You can maybe you normally sit half an hour, but today you sit for an hour or 2 hours. You just keep sitting or walking. But we also have to be realistic, so try and pick times. Some people do it in a lunch break, mornings, evenings. You pick times that work for you and you keep coming back to your meditation object so it becomes something you're familiar with and it's a skill you get better at. So that's enough for this evening. We can always do some more questions tomorrow. And we just pay